are the major challenges of the state?
Now, the situation, of course, is similar to what Dr. Mohammed Kau, the Acting Secretary of the Federal Capital Territory Health and Human Services, said about the FCT. Now, he insisted that the movement of persons from their home states into the FCT was the source of the importation of the virus in the territory.
And for Yobe, we had the State Commissioner of Health, Dr. Mohammed Lawan Ghana, who explained that efforts are being intensified to avoid community spread while making adequate use of isolation centers.
Now, the manager of the Oyo State Task Force team on COVID-19, Dr. Taiwo Ladipo, drew attention to the expansion and completion of isolation centers in the state. While in Kano, the authorities are insisting on a single passenger for motorcycles and the use of face masks. Dr. Tijani Hussaini, who is coordinator of the Kano State Technical Response Team on the coronavirus pandemic, said that the measures were being obeyed by residents.
From all these, it is evident that states in the country are making concerted efforts to reduce community spread of the virus, especially as they restrict interstate travel, though some others have lifted the ban on religious gatherings.
Now, Chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, who is also Secretary of the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, has informed Nigerians of additional 2 weeks of graduated lockdown, which he says will be used by institutions to plan for the reopening of the economy.
We will engage more states today on their plans to combat the virus, lessons learned from other subnationals, national and international efforts, as well as major challenges in the fight to rid their states of the virus. This is our focus on Good Morning Nigeria this Thursday. Thanks for joining us, as always. My name is Kirian Umayo.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Kirian and also welcoming you to the program. As always, we're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're broadcasting here from our Abuja headquarters studios. Newspaper review, business, and others will form part of the complementary segments of the program. But first, let's take the highlights of the morning news, and here's our colleague Chibobi Water-Nanji. Good morning, Chibobi.
Hello, good morning, Kingsley and Kieran. It's good to see you this morning. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. At about midnight of 20th May 2020, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control confirmed 284 new cases of COVID-19 in the country. The breakdown of the figures show that Lagos has 199 new cases, Rivers 26, Oyo 19, FCT and Borno 8 each. Others are Plateau 7, Jigawa 6, Kano 5, Abia 2 and 1 in each of Ekiti, Delta, Kwara and Taraba states. Now, with this development, Nigeria now has a total of 6,677 new cases of COVID-19, out of which 1,840 were discharged, while 200 patients died of the virus. In the meantime, the Federal Executive Council has approved 2.9 billion naira for the provision of water and fire service equipment in the National Oil and Gas Park to be sited in Odukbani, Cross River State. The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timi Silva, announced this while briefing newsmen after the meeting of the Federal Executive Council.
It's important to know that this contract has already attained 87.9% completion, but it was stalled in 2012 after the 90-meter bridge had been constructed. There was huge flooding, which made it impossible for the 2-kilometer approach road to be constructed. The lapse in time and period, like I say, when the project was actually awarded in 2009 till date, has made the contract, rates to be reviewed.
That was Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, speaking there. The House of Representatives is partnering the executive arm of government to confront the coronavirus pandemic on all fronts. Now, this is just as the Speaker, Femi Gbajabiamila, inaugurated an 18-member ad hoc committee on COVID-19.
Citizens, doctors, nurses, and all the health workers on the front lines of the fight against COVID-19 in Nigeria receive the full protection that they deserve and the benefits they have so honorably earned.
We will interact and make sure we do those things that will add value to what is happening.
To the judiciary, the Federal High Court in Abuja has ordered that all court processes relating to the suit challenging the consideration of the Control of Infectious Diseases Bill 2020 by the House of Representatives be served on the Speaker, Femi Gbajabiamila, through his lawyer. Now, the court gave the order following the inability of the applicant, former Kogi West Senator Dino Milaye, to effect service of process on all the respondents.
And I know he will definitely respect the fact that this matter is already before a court and they will not take any further action in respect of the matter.
And one thing so clear is this: there's no court order restraining the House from doing their constitutional function.
Similarly, the Senate Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters has screened 3 out of the 4 nominees as chairman and commissioners of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission. The Senate Committee promised to strengthen the commission by ensuring quick passage of the reform bill before the National Assembly.
It should be the closest agency or one of the closest in contact with the National Assembly.
We always make presentation in the National Assembly. I have been appearing in the National Assembly.
Almost all penalty clauses is either 200 naira or 6 months imprisonment.
The fine is not realistic in a modern society. Now, it goes along with the act itself. You cannot just go and reform only the fines and leave the act. It has to be a holistic approach.
In other stories now, President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the renewal of appointments of executive directors of the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA. In a letter signed by Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, President Muhammadu Buhari renewed their appointments as executive directors of the NTA for a second and final term of 3 years. They are Muhammad Labo, Executive Director News, Wale Koka, Executive Director Programs, Steve Moses Okpanachi, Executive Director Engineering, Abdul Hamid Saliu Dembos, Executive Director Marketing, and Dr. Steve Egbo, Executive Director Administration and Training, and Mrs. Fatima Bada, Executive Director Finance. Now, the President has also resuscitated the position of Executive Director Special Duties with the appointment of Malam Lawal Umar Lalu. Malam Lalu retired as Director of Programs in the NTA. The appointments are in accordance with Section 3, Subsection 1 of the Nigerian Television Authority Establishment Act 1977. The appointments take effect from 1st of April 2020. And that concludes the news highlights for now. And Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Kiran just after the break. To stay with us.
Now, time for business news. The Central Bank Governor, Godwin Emefiele, has urged chief executive officers of industrial conglomerates operating in Nigeria to key into the drive by the federal government to sustainably reopen the national economy. Details of this and more with Kolo Mohammed.
Good to know you're there and welcome. As efforts are made towards sustainable reopening of the nation's economy, industrial conglomerates operating in the country have been urged to support efforts aimed at growing the Nigerian economy and returning it to its glory days. The Central Bank Governor, Godwin Emefiele, made the call when he met with the chief executive officers of industrial conglomerates operating in Nigeria. In hopes that the price of crude oil will not remain at low levels for a long period of time, conglomerates are enjoined to key into government's drive to diversify the economy by taking advantage of the country's large population. And digital marketing is entrenched into the nerve of digital economy, signaling a huge rise in income per capita gross domestic product if gotten right.
And if Nigeria adopts digital marketing or makes the whole entire economy, digitalize the entire economy, it's going to make things really easy, and more money is going to keep coming into Nigeria. There's going to be easy way of doing business in Nigeria. Business is not really going to be difficult. You have a lot of people coming in, starting up their business, and even FIRS will be happy because, you know, people are going to pay their tax without hassle, and they're going to be happy about it. Why? Because the economy is moving. Why? Because you're using digital marketing and everything is fast.
Experts say going digital reduces the cost of input while expanding the grid of profit and reach. Let's see where medical activities on the floor of the National Exchange placed market indices. I am Kolo Muhammad. Do stay safe. Many thanks for having you along.
Many thanks, Kolo Muhammad, for the business package. Up next is Newspaper Review.
Well, it's our pleasure to have Bayo Tebi, as always, here with us this morning for Newspaper Review. Bayo, it's good to have you again.
Thank you, Kilian. Good morning. Good morning, Kesley.
Right,
good morning, Nigeria.
Yes, good to see you. Kilian, want me to kick off? Or
yeah, sure.
All right, so let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. A Nation newspaper, above the nameplate, retired civil servants sue El-Rufai. Anger over deductions. That's the rider. Details on page 7. APC and PDP issue Ondo and Edo polls guidelines. Primaries get dates. That's on page 5. 292 Nigerians return from Saudi Arabia. Returnees in isolation. And then below the nameplate, Buhari mourns as Dia's wife dies. Buhari mourns as Dia's wife dies. That's page 5. Kalu gets June 2nd date on release bid. That's on page 5. Lead story says Sultan counters governance over Eid al-Fitr prayers. NSCIA, that's the Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs leader, directs Muslims to pray at home as Ganduje, Mohammed and Zulum others open praying grounds. FCT minister shuns pressure to reopen mosques and churches. That story is on the front page, and you have a jump on to page 8. Lagos to admit only severe cases at isolation centers. With 2 riders, patients with mild symptoms for home treatment. State records 199 out of 284 new cases. And below the sidebar there, showing in numbers the COVID-19 crisis around the world and indeed in Nigeria, you have a number of riders pointing to stories inside. 8 doctors positive in Zamfara. Kogi to test more people. 78-year-old dies in Delta. Lagos doctors begin sit-at-home strike. 17 patients discharged in Lagos. Oyetola opens 160-bed center. Wife joins husband in center. And bishops makes case for herbs. And lastly, right at the foot of the front page, Wike, that's Governor of Rivers. Oil workers account for 60% of virus cases in Rivers. And 96 inmates get pardon. That's page 4. Kieran.
All right, let's turn to the Daily Sun. On the right-hand side of the nameplate, to have EFCC alleges resurgence of blackmail smear campaign against Magu. Magu, of course, is the chairman of EFCC. There's a writer to this. He said, chairman warns against fraudsters using COVID-19 for rip-off. It's on page 5. Now, below the nameplate directly, you have Ondo Group by PDP chooses candidate July 22nd and 23rd. The story is fully captured on page 28. Lead story, COVID-19 controversy over Chinese doctor's visa. 2 riders. They got 30 days visa, says federal government. No, they got 3 months, Chinese embassy. There are other stories here. Court hears a suit seeking Kalu's release from prison June 2nd. That's on page 3. Aba Ubo land tussle, Supreme Court judgment final, says High Court. These two communities are in Anambra State. It's on page 5. Curfew. Lagos doctors begin strike in protest of police harassment. Abuja doctors kick over molestation. It's on page 26. Now Khan urges federal government to restructure security and relax lockdown. It's on page 6. COVID-19, 8 doctors test positive in Zamfara, according to NMA, Nigerian Medical Association. The story is on page 28. And let's bring in Bayo now for further analysis.
Well, let's start with the situation that has happened in Lagos and also Abuja. This relates to Healthcare Provisional Association of Nigeria advises members to stay at home. Similarly, the Nigerian Medical Association Lagos, led by Dr. Salih Hussein, also directed the members to stay at home from 6 p.m. yesterday. He says members were not allowed to move around by the police. Health workers in ambulance with a patient were even impounded in Lagos, and therefore the chairman of the NBA in Lagos says that they should stay at home until the government and the police authorities clarify the situation about essential workers and how they move. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has already intervened in Lagos to save the situation, but meanwhile, the force headquarters, public relations Deputy Commissioner Frakumba has straightened the confusion that came from the directive. He says all essential workers, including medical personnel, firefighters, ambulance services, journalists, and etc., are exempt from the restriction of movement associated with movement, as well as the partial lockdown and the national curfew. The Inspector General of Police had directed that zonal AIGs and Commissioner of Police should not exempt anybody from the ban. So that should put the confusion in straight side, and then medical workers who were protesting should now go back to their work. Talking about COVID-19 now, yesterday we had 284 cases from 13 states. Our national total now is 6,677. We unfortunately again lost 8 of our compatriots. Previously we had 1, and we thought maybe the death toll was going down, but now the total deaths we've recorded is 200. Globally, we have nearly 5 million, 4,939,624. Death toll worldwide is about 325,003. The U.S. presently has the highest with 92,387 deaths. United Kingdom is second with 35,704. In fact, it has overtaken Italy. Italy has 32,330, while France has 28,132. Spain, 27,888. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has warned that false information on COVID-19 is putting people's life in danger. This is what we describe here as fake news. The World Health Organization advised that we should all endeavor to double-check any information against trusted sources. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump says he takes an anti-malaria drug as a preventive measure. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, says a morbid obese president is putting his health at risk. White House Press Secretary explains that away, and he said the president is only being transparent by sharing personal health information. He adds that before he made that information, he consulted with his doctors. China has also reacted. China Global Times described the U.S. president's actions as using witchcraft to lead the war against pandemic, and he says that has accounted for over 19,000 deaths in the United States. So there are concerns about false information here and there, and also cure. Talking about cure now, the World Health Organization says it is now considering Madagascar COVID organic for clinical observations. This came after the President Andry Rajoelina made a virtual conversation with the Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus. World Health Organization says that part of the Solidarity clinical trial for the Madagascar COVID drug will be used as an opportunity to prove the effectiveness of its third protocols. In fact, Madagascar has 2 other protocols. They are injectable medicines, which are aside from the COVID organics. Meanwhile, the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 and Secretary to the Government of the Federation has clarified that the COVID organic donated to Nigeria is at no cost. This, however, will knock off the speculations that is going on in the social media that Madagascar is demanding about 72.5 million from Nigeria for that. You will recall that the visiting Guinea-Bissau president was the one who brought those COVID drugs to Nigeria, and the chairman of the PTF said the 5 cartons has been handed over to the Presidential Task Force. The other confusion that is coming is about the concern for Eid filtered prayers, which is likely to be on Saturday or Sunday. The Nigeria Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs has advised Muslims, because the Eid prayer is not an obligatory prayer. It is a supplementary kind of a prayer, not obligatory. And so the Supreme Council has advised that people should pray at home. But before now, you have 5 states in the Northeast that already eased up the lockdown over the weekend to allow that. 3 states in the Northwest have done the same. 1 state in the North Central has done the same thing. In the South, you have, I think, River State has announced that, while in the Southeast, Ebonyi has also eased lockdown for prayers. But Christian Association of Nigeria, too, is also advocating for a relax in the lockdown. So there's need for the clerics and those in authority to meet and get their acts together. In Kano, I think the governor met with 30 clerics before they reached the conclusion that they are opening up for the Eid al-Fitr prayers.
You know, indeed, in Kano, I think the Council of Ulamas was reported to have indicated that it wasn't consulted before the decision was taken by the state authorities. Other states have stated that they had consultations with all stakeholders before doing this. I think the concern of the Sultan should be taken into consideration. We have seen the effect of community transmission arising from non-observance of social distancing, and the fact that when you have persons congregating in large numbers and you're not being sure of who has what, the risk of higher transmission could be manifest. And yes, it's a significant aspect of religious observance at the end of Ramadan to supplicate to the Almighty in congregation and so on and so forth. But these are very unusual times. I mean, I listened to the Bauchi State Governor yesterday, and he was saying that, fine, they had taken a number of measures, and those measures are working. Now they want to open up the state by relaxing the restriction on movement and large congregations to test the efficacy of the measures that they had earlier deployed. What kind of risk would that be?
See, when you are testing the efficacy of what has done, look, this thing is climbing. I mean, we don't have to deceive ourselves, you know, or live in denial, you know, the fact that coronavirus is rampaging in all the states. The records are there. The point is, there's need to relax lockdown, no doubt. That's what's happening globally. Yes, but then the handling of the relaxing is going to be the issue. The moment you gather, you spread. There are no two ways about it. If you start gathering, you start spreading. It's as simple as that. So
I think it is a big dilemma. Already, some clerics were even arguing there, why open markets and then still keep churches and mosques locked down? Because if you look at the terms of gathering and crowd, one is bigger than the other. But the circumstances are different because people need to go to the market to get a source to buy means of livelihood when you have locked them down in home for a long time. And I think a lot of consultations need to be done to reach what is best for general public good.
Absolutely. Kira, just before you take the editorial, there is a second lead story on the front page of the Nation newspaper. And it says, Lagos to admit only severe cases at isolation centers and patients with mild symptoms for home treatment. Now, yesterday when we were reviewing the papers, there was a report quoting the Honorable Minister of Health, Dr. Usagi Hanire, that in the number of fatalities arising from COVID-19, that those figures were the result of persons who refused or declined to go to isolation centers in order for them to get proper treatment, and they were receiving treatment at home. So were those mild cases or were they severe cases? What should be the proper protocol?
It is a sign of lack of space. There are no two ways about it. It's just a sign of lack of space. It's gradually creeping in. Lack of space for everyone that is affected. So they're treating the critical cases. That is not what has been established.
No, Kira, let's get it clear. That's in Lagos, one can understand. Yes. But elsewhere, you say, look, who are those that should go to the isolation centers? Is it persons who have mild symptoms, persons who have severe symptoms, or who should be treated at home? And when some persons are being treated at home, you say they are undergoing self-medication, XYZ. So what should be the established protocol so that if a positive case is identified, the person knows how to follow through?
I think it's a combination of the two. At the initial stage, when there were challenges for bed space, once you test positive, you self-isolate at home, and you have people who visit you to ensure that a protocol that you are giving is monitored. But when your condition becomes critical, this is when you are moved into isolation centers. Well, the whole idea was to manage the limitations that we have. This is just what is established. But as at now, the initiative for bed space has almost, in most places now, in anticipation, is far ahead of the number of cases we are having.
All right. At this point, we'd like to thank you, Bayo, for being part of our show as usual. I hope to see you again tomorrow.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, the program continues. Well, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NT. And today we are taking a look at a situation report from different states. And to usher us into the conversation this morning, let's take an excerpt from last week's conversation as put together by Victor Azu.
Presently, we have isolation wards in Ibadan, 4 of them. We are actually almost completing the one in Ogbomoso. Shaki is going to come on board rather soon, and then the Barapa axis will have another isolation area, so that all those cases, if found in those parts, will have adequate management in terms of care and treatment.
Kano is in partial lockdown. We have 12 hours in a week. Thursday, like today, Thursday, this is an open day from morning till 2 o'clock, and also on Tuesdays. So this is how Kano operates. And remember that Kano, the government of Kano made wearing of face masks compulsory on all citizens of Kano, and also it also directed that all commercial motorcycles, the tricycles, which we call in Kano, must not take more than 1 person. So also taxis are restricted on the number of people they take, so that we enforce the social distancing. And from what we have seen, Kano people are obeying these instructions.
There are 2 major challenges, which is not unique to Kwara. The first one, I can tell you that the last 20 cases, the last cases we've had in the last 1 week, they have been imported cases. There have been cases that have coming through the border, mostly from Katsina, Jigawa, and Sokoto State, through our borders. And but fortunately, most of the patients that they came through the border, they were already under quarantine, and we took samples and they came back positive. So the challenge is really trying to make sure that we strengthen our efforts in making sure the borders remain closed and the only people with essential services are allowed to come through. The other big challenge is actually having the capacity to test. I think those 2 things, you really don't quite understand the extent of the disease unless you have the capacity to test and get a result back promptly.
Most of the elites have dual houses. You have a house in Abuja, you have one in your homestead. So if there is issue in your homestead, you want to come back to Abuja. So a lot of people have come back, and despite the lockdown and the security at the borders of the state, a lot of people have come in, and many of them have tested, and a lot of them are positive. Some of the numbers we are getting are actually from some of these places.
We have an isolation center here in the state capital, and then of course we have another in the Federal Medical Center in Guru. So those that are tested positive are actually kept in the isolation centers. And then the treatment protocol is what so are using what the NCDC guidelines have clearly spelled out. We are also, in view of the fear of the community transmission, we're also actively searching for cases in the communities. And then, of course, to test them and then bring them into care.
Many thanks, Victor Azo, for the excerpts from last week's conversation in terms of situational reports from the states. Today, as we indicated, we already have a number of guests with us. Joining us via Skype from Calabar, the Cross River State capital, is the Executive Governor of the state, Professor Ben Ayade. Prof, our pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Good morning.
And also joining us via Skype from Ekiti State is the Special Advisor on Development Partnership and Sustainable Goals, and also Secretary to the Ekiti State COVID-19 Committee. That's Margaret Fagboyo. Ms. Fagboyo, a pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And also joining our conversation this morning from our Enugu Network Center is the State's Commissioner for Information, Nnayelugu Chidi Aro. Chidi, it's good to have you on this program today.
Good morning, Kira. It's my pleasure being here.
In our studio here, of course, we have the Acting Secretary of FCT Health and Human Services Secretariat, Dr. Kawo Mohammed. Dr. Mohammed, you're welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. I guess once again, our pleasure to have you with us on the program. Let's begin with the Governor of Cross River State, Professor Ben Ayade. Prof, we've had the privilege of also discussing with your Commissioner for Health several weeks ago, and here we are, almost 3 months since the index case first arrived in Nigeria, and that was on the 27th of February, and with the tally of the number of infections across the country, Cross River continues to record zero. What has been your talisman?
Actually, not talisman. It's a technical and strategic action plan that was taken manner. We actually started action in Nigeria. We closed our borders quite early. We introduced the use of face masks quite early. And so we're so far ahead of the virus that at all times we're totally ahead. And that explains it. And more so that I understand the etiology properly of the virus, so I understand what to do. And that's why we're still where we are. And I'm good to mention that NCDC has just left Calabar yesterday and gave us a clean bill of health and confirmed indeed that based on the structural and normative frameworks and actions we have used today so far, it is obvious and clear that now they can justify and explain why we're still at COVID-19 zero in terms of confirmed cases.
Your Excellency, well, you say it's not talisman, but technical and strategic plan, which has really, played out in your state. Your record is clean, no doubt about that. But I'm going to ask you a question concerning tests. Are you carrying out tests in that state? Because experience of some other states is that they started testing of late. Before then, the virus has, of course, eaten deep into the society. So to what extent have you been engaged, as part of your technical strategy, to engage in massive, if you like, tests to really determine whether you are totally free or not?
Okay. Testing has two ways, technical and commercial. If you want to test, you have to put money in the hands of reagent manufacturers, because that's the real campaign. That's the real business behind it all. Test, 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 test. So that somebody who is manufacturing and producing those reagents somewhere out of Philippines, who are the main people who are driving the COVID-19 scare, can make money. But you don't test blindly because you want to test. You test based on a technical model. If I have a case of somebody who has COVID-19, and use them to test case. Where we don't have a situation of people with direct contact because we have no case in crossover because our borders are locked very early, we only wait until people who fall into the criteria for testing that we take their samples. And to this point in time, we have sent as many samples as we have found relevant to the criteria. And those who have not met the criteria, and I can see NCDC is lowering the standards and lowering the so if somebody has fever now, you are supposed to test. If the person has headache now, you are supposed to test. So at the point, you just start testing and testing. Us, we have been doing our testing, and they can bear witness that we have sent as many samples as people. Give you the other side of it. What's the relationship between the test and the reality? Speaking as a professor of science, they don't relate. The test method being employed today is a presumptive test, and that test only gives you a figment of an idea that there's a possibility. But you need to move beyond that to a confirmed test. It's a test that will follow the Koch postulate. Until that is done, you're describing a positive test on somebody. The coronavirus is a novel virus because its primers are not known, because you need to know its gene sequencing to be able to produce a primer. So the reverse transcriptase which you're using to be able to help you do an amplification of the conversion of the RNA to DNA for you to be able to do the PCR test is still shrouded in doubt because it's not actually a diagnostic tool. So what we do is follow it. But I know that I need to recalibrate that and inputs. So as a state, we only go after cases that we know that have a reason. We've just been given 50 test kits, and we can't afford it lessly. But I know as a professional that cross-state is safe, and we have gone to all the health centers with 400 surveillance officers being trained almost on a weekly basis. We have them across all our primary health centers. They go around. Once we have a reported case in any hospital or anybody comes with similar, we get at the person immediately, watch the person for some days. If there is no improvement, we take sample and we send. And so far, all the samples we have sent have returned negative. And I think we are really fine. And of course, it's like pregnancy. It will manifest in the fullness of time. And so we think by even look at the statistics from our various health departments. Because of this absolute use of the nose mask, the incidence of even respiratory diseases have dropped. Because the cumulative consequence of the use of mask is that it has this cascading effect on the prevention of other related diseases. So indeed, we are very, very comfortable. In fact, the only way you can validate what we have done is that NCDC has just left here yesterday with a clean bill of health, having visited our isolation center, gone to our lab, gone to the hospitals, gone to the general hospital, gone to our border post, for a state to buy brand new 100 vehicles, policing our border between Cameroon and Cross River State, policing our neighbors who have all... Look, we are just at the epicenter of coronavirus. And so I sleep on the border post myself. So we've put in so much, and I think God is helping us to justify our efforts. And so testing is there, but testing should not be done blindly because we are desperate to be able to up the figures.
Well, Professor Ben Ayade, thank you very much for your perspective. We had some audio glitches while you were speaking, but happily it cleared up. So we'll still stay with you. You've made some controversial points in the past, according to persons who responded to you, and I'm sure that those responses will not be any different on this occasion, especially as you seem to be stepping into the area of the politics of public health on the international plane. I mean, you talked about reagents, test, going to give business to some other persons, and you're speaking from a professional background. You want to tell us some more about that and why you think that the current testing methods are not probably the right thing to be doing at this time, so that the herd mentality that seems to be driving everyone else around the world can be modified or modulated, and then we take a more realistic approach in our national circumstance.
Normally, tests for viruses generally, even if you're looking at enzyme-linked immunosorbent or you're looking at even general fungal tests, modified agar-gel precipitation technique, whatever technique you're using, there are 3 stages through which you have to go through a test to get to a point where you can make a confirmed statement. And the basic principle is that for you to do that confirmation, you have to go beyond just that presumptive test. And one way to do it is that for you to establish that this man is down, and he's down because of coronavirus, he's down in particular because of N coronavirus, you must be able to establish that the source of the disease is occasioned by that organism. By first isolating that organism, that virus, and using that virus and reinfect a healthy host cell. And that host cell must manifest the same clinical symptoms. And you must re-isolate that organism in pure culture. It is only when you have done that that you can say it's for certain that this organism or this virus is responsible for this ailment. Otherwise, you're still at presumptive stage. The commercial component, the international politics of it is that I have asked myself, we have professors of virology, and I trust Nigerian professors. They are extremely, extremely good. The universities are not using them. Why are we producing reagents? Why are we flying in reagents into Nigeria? Why are we flying in reverse transcriptase into Nigeria? Why are we not producing it? I mean, just imagine if this border closure continues for long, you will run out of drugs, because even our drug manufacturing companies in Nigeria import the active ingredients. So they only do packaging. So time has come when this country must ask herself, a leading country in Africa, a whole continent, will be at the mercy of a test protocol that is not adopted to us. You must also understand. I think it's working, but I think it's sad for people not to see that it is real business. So if either you're buying vaccine or you're buying test kits, someone somewhere else is making money. And once you start going to community testing, there's no end to it. You just keep testing and keep raising the figures. And somebody is going to his bank account. I think it justifies that.
All right, Professor Ayede, we're still having little difficulty along the line of communication between us here and you there in Calabar. I just hope you can take one more question, before we can, of course, bring in other guests that we have today. And that's going to be on a very important aspect of COVID-19, which has also stirred up some level of controversy across the globe. And that has to do with the vaccine for coronavirus. We actually discussed with your Commissioner of Health, as Kingsley pointed out some time ago, and she raised the issue of Cross River State engaging also in vaccine production. We'd like you to tell us more about that. Well, this is very important because globally speaking, about 100 pharmaceutical companies are now engaged in sourcing vaccine for COVID-19. None has necessarily been successful so far. But if you are engaged in that, to what extent has that gone? And is it a possibility that you can really husband the production of vaccine for COVID-19?
again, the system is breaking up. I hope you. Vaccine production is as old as science. And I know that at this point in time in this country, Nigeria ought to have a vaccine production plant. It's not rocket science. The process of production of vaccine is well known to any professor of virology, immunology in this field. I just give you a good example. Artemisa annua, a plant that grows very well here in Nigeria. Why have we not thought of cultivating it, extracting the exudate, and passing it through a chemical engineering process in a chemical reactor and produce artemisinin? And it is that artemisinin that is a precursor for reactors, which have now been proven to be effective even against coronavirus because they share some protein relativity. And so I think that's what all the funding, the support federal government is getting. They can't put it on palliative because palliative is like putting food through the stomach and it goes into waste. And what percentage of the public will get that? You can imagine that if you put all of that fund together and take an aggressive investment. And we have 3 major vaccine factory manufacturers, and they give you all the protocols. And it costs $32 million. You have a vaccination plant ready. In fact, the price I got from a company out of Czech Republic was $52 million. Everything in. That is no money to federal government of Nigeria. You can set up that factory, bring in some of our professors from university, bring in some lead consultants, lead researchers from other countries, put a team together, let Nigeria lead Africa. We can't continue to follow. We can't. I am opposed to the procurement of vaccines from another country. I won't even admit that in my state. I won't, because I have no idea about what is the content. I have no idea. So if I have to use that vaccine, I have to subject it through the Fourier Transform Dictionary to actually do a full specification of every single component therein. Because the theory of artificial intelligence coming in is not something you can dismiss with a wave of the left hand. I feel concerned that when international scholars raise concern about the population of Africa, in fact, don't push me to tell you that if you know how much I know, I think we will change our strategy completely. We will change our. We must know that Nigeria leads Africa. And if Nigeria chooses to lead from the rear by waiting and seeing what the white man is doing and following, we don't have the same climate. We don't have the same situation. We are from a very malaria endemic zone where our body systems in the course of time have already developed some natural immune systems against coronavirus and those related viruses. And so the spread is contrary to what they think. Between you and I, as we speak, atmospheric temperature will be down to 32 degrees centigrade. The coronavirus won't survive beyond 18 to 20 degrees centigrade. It's a sacrifice. And so while they were expecting the kind of deaths they're expecting, it doesn't work in our situation. So we need to sit down and adopt and customize a protocol that reflects our peculiar needs. Until we do so, we'll simply just be copying what they are doing, which may not be a true solution to our circumstance. I think a vaccine plant has become very imperative for the federal government. You must do that. And Cross River State can give the lead. I can be the lead researcher. I'm already going very far with the issue of vaccine. I just wish I run a state that was a little better. I just wish I do. Because I don't see why this country, with the best of brains in the world, with the best population, good demography, good natural resources, will still be lacking behind and following other nations. Where is the pride for the black man? And that's why they say the black man only thinks from the stomach. He is driven by emotion and passion. But I think we should task our brains instead of tasking our people and following adopted protocols that have been invented in other countries. Nigeria should.
All right. Executive Governor of Cross River, Professor Ben Ayade, we would like to appreciate the comments that you've made. We don't know how much time you have left. We understand that you have some other engagements, but we could still pop a couple of questions to you, but you know the other guests have also been watching and listening to your perspective on this matter. Let me just ask you this question. You've talked about your concern as to why Nigerian professors of virology and immunology do not appear to be on the front row in our national response strategy to all of this. Have you tried to contact any of them as a community of scientists to see what can be done? Because I know that immunology is studied usually at the postgraduate level from master's one for persons who already have degrees in biochemistry or microbiology.
Well, I have not put any fault on them. The university system is not structured to perform this level of advanced research as it is today. I used to teach in the University of Ibadan, and I know how the university was then, and I know how the situation today. You can go to a university, a department of microbiology, and they don't have a functional microscope. So it's been our own biomedical research center. As a national biomedical research, we have professors of biotechnology. Actually, the one that is heading my team, who is Professor Andy, I brought him from out of Japan. He's back here. We're trying to start our work on vaccine production for coronavirus and also. But it's not a subject for discussion at this level, because that's part of my professional calling. But my colleagues that we speak together, my other professors of this related field, they express the frustration that they have. Some of them came back to this country believing that they will come and contribute their quota, only to just meet classrooms, just teach theory and walk away. I don't know of any student who is doing proper practical classes in sciences today in Nigeria. And so I don't put the blame on the university professors or the postgraduate students, but on the system that, of course, federal government does our best to put funding on education, but the funding is not enough. Proliferation of universities, state universities, to the extent that you can see a graduate of a university speaking with a typical accent, an indication that the local and state universities have driven down the issue of quality teaching and quality research and quality learning. And so it's a miasma of some sort that it will require a full sociological surgery. As a country, we need to really say sorry. If you must be the leader of Africa, you can't lead from the back like this. It's the same that Madagascar is doing what we all know. That simple extraction that they have just done. That's what should happen here. I'm sure they are using a small equipment like the succinate extractor and just concentrating the active ingredients. We can do much better as a country. And we have the resources, we have the people, we have the technical know-how, we have the financial muscle to set it up. It's the power of the will, it's the capacity of the mind power to put your soul above your problem so that your body can follow.
The capacity of manpower, I want to identify myself with that, because over the years, we've been talking about what science can do in our country, and of course you've told us that we have the capacity in terms of human resource and of course the financial muscle to do that. What Madagascar has done, as according to what you said, actually is something we can do much better if we focus our attention on that. Thank you, Professor Ben Ayade, the Executive Governor of Cross River State. We're going to return to you definitely before the end of the program. For now, let's go down to Enugu, where we have the Commissioner for Information, Nnayelugo Chidiaro. Nnayelugo, I want to start by asking you to give us an idea of what the fight against coronavirus is like in Enugu, because shortly before Enugu started recording cases, we heard about nurses and doctors at one of the hospitals, major one, as a matter of fact, that protested that they didn't have enough PPE and other tools to work with at that point. And I hope that has been resolved. Maybe you will tell us about that. But we would also like you to also tell us what the situation is like in terms of isolation center in Enugu, how equipped they are, and of course, what is the motivation for the medical workers who are on the front line.
Thank you, Kirian. I'm glad to be with you this morning, and surprisingly, I also need to tell you that I'm glad to tell you that some of the perception which you're running through initially, it's not the reality. First, Enugu, by the grace of God, under the leadership of the governor who is providing round-the-clock 24-hour leadership in this fight, is doing very, very well. I'll start first with the basis of what you complained about our nurses and our doctors. Well, those were isolated incidents that happened early. And it didn't have to do with the state's preparedness. It actually had to do with some little political, problem amongst the staff in one of our major hospitals. That was immediately resolved. I can tell you that as far as Enugu is concerned, Enugu's preparedness is at its best. Now let's take the isolation centers. His Excellency the Governor directed immediately we got into this global pandemic that we establish an isolation center. On the advice of our medical professionals, we moved that isolation center from Kolari to Parkland so that it can have access to all the medical facilities that teaching hospital provides. But calculating that things could get out of hand, His Excellency immediately established another isolation center in Osoka and then converted our diagnostic center to a 200-bedded isolation center here in Enugu. Right now, the 3 isolation centers are fully functional. And I can tell you, amongst the cases Enugu has today, 2 are being treated in Nsukka. Because the Nsukka Isolation Center was created to take care of people who could have these problems around that area. And that preparation is working fully for us now. So we have people working there. We have the other 2 isolation centers fully functional. I'm not saying that these centers are just functional. They are fully equipped with all it takes for the centers to work well. This includes the provision of PPEs for all our medical staff. Of course, thanks to Kakovid, who came to support our effort after we had established a 100-bedded capacity isolation center, the diagnostic center. Kakovid came in to help to upgrade the place to 200-bed capacity. But before they came, the essential things were there. Now, as to the welfare of the medical officers on the front line, I can bet you that I don't think anybody is doing better than us in Nigeria. First, Enugu was the first state in Nigeria to introduce a group life assurance policy for all medical officers involved in this struggle. I'm sure other state governments copied us afterwards. Second, Enugu implemented immediately an increase in 25% of salary of all medical workers in the state, whether they find themselves in the Ministry of Agric, in the Ministry of Environment, and of course in all our medical institutions. This has been paid. 3, Enugu State immediately ordered the payment of special allowances to all the 124 medical officers in the front line, split in our 3 isolation centers. And they've been receiving allowances ranging from 75,000 to the lowest, about 20,000 naira every week. This staff include drivers of ambulances, include security men, include cleaners in these isolation centers. And of course, you can see the result. Enugu as of today has a total of 16 positive cases. We have 10 active. 6 has been successfully treated and discharged by the grace of God. This speaks a lot about the capacity of Enugu to deal with these situations. You will recall that even in preparation earlier than COVID started hitting us hard around the whole nation, that His Excellency the Governor had released a sum of 330 million naira to give capacity immediately to the multi-sectoral committee to prepare for this. In this direction, the multi-sectoral committee acquired new ambulances, did small infrastructural work on the new isolation center, started a massive sensitization, purchased massively personal protective equipment, which includes face masks, hand gloves, PPEs for the body, and all the decontaminating agents we need, the sanitizers and other chemical agents that are used to decontaminate the places. His Excellency didn't stop at that. He immediately directed much more effort in sensitization and released the sum of 22.8 million naira which was released to all the 456 autonomous communities in the state to hire town criers, and sensitization got on the places. He didn't stop on that. He has continued to do positive engagement with leaders of the state. Of course, we did everything to shut the borders. It is clear to everybody in the country that there's a national problem about border closures. And that is why Enugu has all its cases imported. But His Excellency has provided routine leadership, visits one of the borders in the minimum every day, stays out every night to ensure that the curfew is enforced. And you can see that when he saw that there was still some leakage, he decided to bring in about the stakeholders dialogue on the issues of closure of these borders. To this direction, he met with the leadership of the Traditional Rulers Council in the state, with the leadership of Town Union Association in the state, with council chairmen, and in fact directed. Right now, council chairmen in border areas are living at the border. I can tell you that. Go to Oji River, go to Denu, go to Abuja North. In fact, this morning, as part of our monitoring strategy, I've been on phone contact with the chairman of Udenu local government. I've been on phone contact with the chairman of Ibueze North local government, and they all slept in their borders. Because His Excellency has made it clear that they need to understand the importance of this. Not just withstanding that, His Excellency has also been relating and engaging very closely with his brother governors in Benue, in Ebonyi, in Anambra, to ensure that their collaborative efforts keep these places safe. I want to tell you something about this governor and this fight against COVID. This governor has had a unique approach to this fight. One is that he considers the interest of the state. Two is that he looks at it from the regional perspective, because Enugu is the center of the southeast. And three, you know, he spent 3 solid terms in the National Assembly. So you cannot doubt his commitment to the Nigerian nation. You cannot doubt.
Let's go over now to Ekiti State, where we earlier introduced the Secretary of the Ekiti COVID-19 Committee, Margaret Fagboyo. Ms. Fagboyo, of course, sorry we've kept you on hold for a while. Tell us, what is it that has been happening in Ekiti State since the outbreak of coronavirus in your jurisdiction?
Okay. Thank you very much for having me. First, I would like to commend His Excellency Dr. John Kayode Fayemi for his leadership at the NGF level and also at the state level. Presently, we have had 20 cases in Ekiti State, 13 discharged and 2 deaths. We have Ekiti State COVID-19 Response Hub at www.covid19ekitistate.gov.ng. We have done 177 tests in Ekiti State. Our portals contain the government of Ekiti actions to combat and contain the widely spread novel coronavirus. The portal enables the public to access Ekiti COVID-19 management dashboard, particularly the overview of COVID-19 cases in Ekiti State. In under the leadership of our governor, swiftly put in place these resources and structures in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Health and Nigeria Center for Disease Control, the NCDC, to ensure proactiveness and consistency throughout the response to the health emergency. On the 3rd of March 2020, to be precise, Dr. John Kayode Fayemi set up a 40-man task force, although now grown to 49. I'm one of the new addition, and Mr. Femi Adeoye, whose video went viral, who refused his son entry into his house for violating unknown restrictions, was made an ambassador of COVID-19 for his uprightness, commitment, and dedication to the fight against COVID-19. The government put in place essential infrastructures and resources to screen Ekiti banned passengers from all major motor parks leading into Ekiti State and at the land borders. Well, the 49 task force on coronavirus, constituted by Governor Kayode Fayemi, is working closely with the leadership of the Road Transport Network, the NURT, to maintain passengers' manifest for fast traceability if the need arise. And also to note that the task force took the prevention awareness campaign to churches and markets in Ekiti to sensitize people on the pandemic just before the lockdown. Our first index case of COVID-19 was on the 18th of March. Our communication team, led by the Commissioner for Information, Areolu Muyiwa, Olumilua and the Special Advisor on Communication have activated massive, public awareness on all radio and TV stations in local languages so that our people understand what we're talking about. And in line with the National Center for Disease Control Directive, we have designated an isolation center in the state for quarantine and treatment at Obade Igbe General Hospital. We are affiliated to a network of NCDC testing lab for fast evaluations of samples. And the government of Ekiti also reactivated its response and surveillance team for the prevention of the deadly viral infection. The epidemic surveillance officers have swung into action by moving into rural communities for coordinated patrol and extensive sensitization. Also, a 24 emergency operation center was set up to coordinate its response to the virus. We have dedicated hotlines that are made available to the public to call if they suspect infection. We have the national emergency number 112 and also the Ekiti hotlines 09062974034-526. To further strengthen Ekiti COVID-19 preparedness, Governor Kayode Fayemi provided ambulances and other logistics to the coronavirus on March 6, 2020, just before our index case, to make their work swift and efficient. On the 16th of March, Ekiti State Task Force on COVID-19 had a sensitization meeting with representatives of all banks operating in Ekiti State to work out strategies for banking hall compliance with social distancing and other preventive measures to keep Ekiti residents safe from the pandemic. You and I know that people go to banks and have a long queue without actually maintaining social distancing. For us to be able to curb this virus, this is very essential. And that was why we met with all the bankers in the state. The governor also announced its lockdown measures, placing curfew and restrictions on movement, and the distribution of food palliative commenced immediately the government announced the lockdown, distributing food items to people in Ekiti State to cushion the effect of the pandemic. And on the 3rd April, the governor nominated prominent Ekiti sons and daughters into a committee called the Response Resource Mobilization Committee. Their terms of reference is to mobilize resources for the state to fight COVID-19. As you know, government cannot do it alone. So we are calling on philanthropists, private individuals, corporate organizations to join us in the fight to source for direct funding campaign for COVID-19. They also identify and solicit for effective funding channels, sources, and also to maintain duties consistent with their posts. Membership of distinguished Ekiti sons and daughters was drawn from various backgrounds of women endeavors with extensive experience and expertise. And they have like 6 committees. We have the Central Working Committee, we have the Medical, Logistic and Project Nomination Committee, and that is the committee that just procured the molecular laboratory and embarking on hospital upgrade projects and training of our health workers, and putting health insurance in place for 500 frontline workers. The fundraising committee, as we speak today, they have raised 694,582,612 naira 52 kobo, with individuals raising about 645 million and 48 million from government employees donations. We have a total of 552 donors. We have 38 people donating to food bank and also 28 non-food donors. We have the federal government institutions relating with federal government on opportunities that state can tap. We have the development finance institution relating with international institutions and people in diaspora. And lastly, the fund management and evaluation committee, who will monitor and supervise fund management for transparency and accountability purpose. And just to inform you that just on May 18, last Sunday, we published the names of all donors in the Punch and newspaper, from the highest donor of 100 million to the lowest donor of 100 naira. And this is just to tell people that we are transparent about the process and that the money donated by people will be judiciously used. I would like to commend the achievement of the Response Resource Mobilization Committee within a month of its setup. And lastly, the molecular laboratory. We just procured our molecular diagnostic laboratory installed at our Ekiti State University Hospital. With the installation, Ekiti State will be able to carry out its own community testing and can be more scientific in its deployment of resources in combating the pandemic. Add to this is the benefit of the laboratory to EXUS for testing for other infectious diseases. So this is not just for the period of COVID. This laboratory lab can be used post-COVID, and it will help strengthen the existing health and scientific laboratory in the state. We have also partnered with...
all right, Special Advisor on Development Partnership and Sustainable Goals and Secretary Ekiti State COVID-19 Committee, Margaret Farboyo. Well, I can see the passion, with which you are, elucidating the very impressive strategy, put in place in Ekiti State. We will come back to you as we make progress. For now, we are back to Abuja studio, where we still have Acting Secretary, FCT Health and Human Services Secretary, Dr. Kau. Dr. Kau, give us also an idea of what the situation is at the moment at the FCT. The relaxing of the lockdown has been effective for some days now, and the Nigerians are looking forward. In fact, the FCT residents are also looking forward to more relaxing or more relaxation of the lockdown. Give us an idea of what the situation is like, especially again on the aspect of those who are down with COVID-19, the different isolation centers in the city, and of course the other issues are rising as a result of the ease of the lockdown in the FCT.
Thank you very much. And for us in FCT, I prefer to talk more on challenges, because we've been ramming on this. We've been talking about what we have done, the centers and all those things. We have emerging challenges that are very disturbing to us. It's better we talk about them. Sorry. Of late, we have noticed a lot of people dying before they get to the hospital. And after their death, we are invited to come and evacuate them, and we do post-mortem test, and a lot of them are turning positive. Now, our concern and our problem is, with all the information going to the society, with all the radio and TV jingles about COVID-19, why should people have symptoms, get sick, die without getting the authorities to come and test them, to take them to isolation centers? So it's really disturbing. I'll give you some instances. There's a gentleman, a very young gentleman, about 32 years old, that died in one of the parks. I think he works in the parks. We were immediately contacted. We went and took a sample. It turns out to be positive. There's another gentleman, also about 58-year-old, died in his house. So for us in FCT, this is raising a big concern. And we need...
Is it at the city center or in the suburbs of Abuja?
City center. So we need to inform the society that a lot of things are going on. And as government, you can only act if you get information. We are intensifying care surge in the communities. We are going to the facilities, both secondary and tertiary and primary, to station our people to test people that have signs and symptoms of COVID-19. But people living in their houses, in their places of abode, is posing a big challenge to us.
I was just wondering, Dr. Kau, we've had you on Good Morning Nigeria for several editions now while we're taking state reviews. I'd just like you to clarify this. Before COVID-19, there were cases of sudden death. People just dying. And then, of course, the autopsy will confirm the cause of death. Why, therefore, would it not be a surprise that people are still just dying?
Surprise because a lot of them, you test them, they are positive for COVID-19. If you test them and they are not, there's a nurse that died in Musa Hospital. When we tested, it was negative, so it was not, it's the normal sudden death that may be cardiac problem or other problems. But when you test them, and a lot of them are turning to be COVID-19 positive patients, that is when the concern, is raising. Coupled with the fact that we have a lot of infected cases that do not still believe that this is real. Yesterday, somebody asked me in one of the programs that, is this COVID-19 real? And that's a young man who sent in a WhatsApp question to the presenter, that they should ask the doctor that, is this COVID-19 real? So if at this stage, people are still asking if these things are real, people are tested and they are positive, they don't want to present themselves for treatment, it's raising some serious concern to us.
When you say present yourself for treatment, I mean, part of what experts have said on Good Morning Nigeria, and incidentally, Kirian and I have been on those programs, there appears to be sometimes a very thin line between ailments that we knew previously. Has anybody been diagnosed of pneumonia these days? Because some people will tell you, even in advanced countries, Russia is battling with that, to say that what is diagnosed as pneumonia is actually COVID-19. And then there's always that issue of persons with underlying ailments. How do you manage those underlying ailments in an isolation center? And what kind of treatment do you get, assuming you're not in an isolation center and the person has just a mild symptom of COVID-19, but in the meantime, the person has those underlying ailments. So it's still, of course, I couldn't possibly be a corona skeptic. We understand that it is real. But for some of these other issues, how do you clarify this for the benefit of the public?
See, it's very easy. I'll just answer you with an example that happened last night. We were called to come to Barcelona Hotel. One of the gentlemen that came back from the UK also that are being quarantined there, an asthmatic patient that needed attention. And we sent a team. They examined him. They found that he's asthmatic. He had done his test 3 days earlier, and we got in touch with the laboratory. The result came out, he's negative, sorry. And so his case is just his asthma. And so we managed him. He is presently in one of our hospitals, being managed an asthmatic case. But you see, especially respiratory system infections, they are very, very similar to COVID-19. Anybody with those symptoms is considered to be COVID-19 until proven otherwise.
Sorry?
Anybody with symptoms of respiratory system infection or disease is considered to be COVID-19 until you prove it is not. That's the best way for you to be sure. Are you getting me? So if I come with cough, breathlessness, and some other sneezing and all those things, immediately I should be tested for COVID-19 while I'm being treated for whatever ailment that the doctor thinks I have. If I'm negative, then I'm treated as normal person. But if I'm positive, then COVID-19 is complicating.
Go ahead.
Is complicating the situation, and it can be worse because if you have a respiratory disease and you are COVID-19 patient, then you have a bigger problem.
I think, Kisley, part of the problem, is that the medical world is experiencing one of the most difficult times in terms of even testing, in terms of accuracy of tests, in terms of even the tools required for the test, because there's a thin line between COVID-19 and SARS, MERS, and other similar ailments that attack the upper respiratory system. That is what has been established. For instance, the person you said that died and he was tested and he tested positive, is there any member of his family that tested positive, because invariably, if you are nursing a sick person, you come close to that person, the possibility of transmitting that disease is almost 90% among the members of the same family. So the thing that you have explained is quite clear. Really, it is clear, because if you die suddenly and you test positive, definitely you have to attribute that to COVID-19. I don't know whether we'll see how the governor with us, in Cross. Well, the governor is gone, and we also appreciate his contributions. Kingsley, I want to go back to Enugu once more. Chidi Arrow, you painted a very beautiful scenario with respect to the fight against coronavirus in Enugu. In fact, it was a robust, strategy put in place by Governor and his lieutenant, which you are among, in terms of curbing this virus in that part of the country. And as a matter of fact, of course, Enugu is known to be a very known center when it comes to medical, works. And I want to see how that can be translated, into building, the state's health infrastructure. I want to ask you about the issue of engaging in having molecular laboratory, and I want to also know the testing capacity of Enugu in the case of any eventuality, and we need to have a community testing and what have you. Do you have the wherewithal, to engage in that? And well, of course, to know that PPEs are available, that is noted. But is there any other expansion mechanism being put in place by the government to, in fact, let's look at post-COVID-19 with respect to the health sector of that state?
Okay, thank you, Kirian. First, let me start from where you stopped, which is our capacity for expansion. It will be glad to inform you that right now, construction work is at top gear to build the first ever infectious disease hospital of specialist care in the whole Southeast. That job is almost 50% done, and every day it is going on. So Enugu is soon going to have the first infectious disease specialist hospital in Enugu, located at the Kolari, former site of the Kolari Hospital. That's one. Two, Kirian, the government is very conscious of the fact that the lives of the people are important to us. So we have 52 secondary healthcare facilities in the state. Out of these 52, 10 of them are general hospitals, and 42 others are cottage hospitals. Now, what is the government doing already? You could recall that it is this same government that completed work in 4 of these general hospitals. That is the one located in Abuja, the polyclinic, the one in Udi, and then we've done massive work in the general hospital in Osoka. So what the government has done is to continue to increase our redundancy capacity to meet these challenges. So what do we mean? Our 10 general hospitals are undergoing upgrade now, so that we have capacity in these general hospitals in case our 3 isolation centers run off. So if we move from there, but we also understand that community transmission could be possible, and then people are endangered in various areas. So we've activated effective training and surveillance work in all our 52 secondary medical healthcare centers. We've moved further to our 456 primary healthcare centers, and ongoing trainings are there every day to make sure that, assuming there's any extent of community transmission, the workers at these primary healthcare centers are, 1, protected, 2, they can quickly identify these cases, 3, they can make contact with the central command and they are picked up immediately. And this has been tried. In fact, the last 2 cases we had, which involved a woman who came back with her husband's corpse, despite all the border lock, in less than 1 hour after the test came positive, she was picked up from her village and sent to our isolation center. So in all this, we are doing that. The Executive Council met last week, and in order to continue to improve these capacities, the Executive Council awarded a contract for improvement of solar facilities in 100 of these medical facilities we have in the state. They didn't stop at that. The Executive Council tied the provision of water as an essential struggle in the fight against COVID-19. In that same Executive Council, the Executive Council awarded contract for immediate provision of erosion control works at our twin pipe center that brings our water from Ajali and Udi water corporations to Enugu. This is to ensure that we do not lose provision of water at all points in time. That's okay on that part. In terms of provision of PPE and other medical equipment, for instance, in our major teaching hospital, there's a standing instruction from His Excellency that PPEs are replaced in every fortnight. Whether they are finished or not, they are replaced in every fortnight. So you can see that the state is continuing to strengthen its redundancy capacity to provide for any eventualities. We don't pray for this, but we are prepared not just for Enugu, but for the entire Southeast, because we are the center of the Southeast. Our surveillance process in the state is so robust. You can imagine how we are picking up all our 16 cases of people who entered. It shows that our surveillance process is so effective that it detects any unknown body to our systems in our local communities. So if you enter from Lagos today, you can do all the magic and beat the security network. You can beat their community set. But once you drop into a community, the activated process of our surveillance and monitoring reacts to the center and will always pick you up.
All right. Honorable Commissioner for Information, Enugu State, thank you very much. I mean, you paint such a glowing picture of the situation in Enugu that indeed I believe other states will have a lot to learn from you. And presumably on the basis of what you have said, Enugu doesn't have any challenges at all. So once again, we will congratulate you on that. But assuming you have challenges, you probably will let us know about those challenges. And more particularly, all the things that the government has been doing, you must have a deep pocket. So anyhow, we'll come back to you later on in the course of the conversation. Let's take a short break now.
You're welcome back to the program. And now we have to take a look at some of the tweets that we have all this morning. And let's begin by reading out what Festus Akimboyo has for us this morning. He says the level of testing for COVID-19 in states is grossly inadequate, while official guidelines are not heeded by many because public trust in state governments to contain the virus has dropped. The states must allow independent scientists and medical experts lead the fight against the virus.
Amobola Humbab's tweets. Now, reports from states lately have continued to give some hope as cases drop. Well, cases are not dropping. That's the numbers that we're seeing from the authorities. But Amobola Humbab's continues. I advise that states in conjunction with the PTF should do more on advocacy and public education. It's important that NOAA services at subnational levels are employed to deliver messages in local dialects.
Cecilia Okoroma says, if for whatever reason any governor reports there is no recorded case of COVID-19 in his state, we give him the benefit of doubt, but should they later experience an unimaginable or unmanageable situation, the governor should be held responsible and perhaps made to face the law of the land.
Dele Jack Solomon tweets. Now, we implore all Nigerians to strictly follow the NEDC public health advisory and sensitization campaigns on the need to practice social distancing and to encourage personal hygiene, including hand washing with running water.
Nandom, we are typical of us. When there is an outbreak, everyone is a suspect. But as soon as we think the storm is over, we forget and begin to be friendly with germs, bacteria, and the virus. By ignoring regular personal hygiene, environmental sanitation, and other precautionary measures, God save us.
Mike Ayakwa, now the president telling state governors to collaborate with PTF on COVID-19 is welcome development. Now we need synergy by all organs to fight this disease in our states.
Innocent James, we have seen some conflicting figures between states and the NCDC lately, and the rate of recovery is mathematically slow, going by the number of cases we keep recording on a daily basis. Is it that patients are not responding to treatment, or what is going on with treatment?
Now, Onyinye Ogoke tweets, I think we should also discuss matters concerning palliatives meant to be distributed to citizens, but nothing was being done, and measures to be taken by the federal government concerning skyrocketing cost of drugs, making it impossible for the masses to purchase such drugs.
Chris Simeon, Kogi and Cross River State are COVID-19 free states. Bravo. The number of cases in FCT is dropping every day because the residents adhere to the precautionary measures.
Now, Steve Bond says that It's a shame that essential workers, including doctors, are being harassed for being on the road. Meanwhile, it seems that interstate travel ban is a mere joke, as non-essential workers still troop in via trucks and buses.
Festus Akimbewa, some state governors are already easing religious gatherings because of Eid. We will lose the fight against COVID-19 if there is no concerted effort and sacrifice on the part of the state government, federal government, and all Nigerians.
Oti Chikwebuka says, please help me ask the government of Enugu State how they are tackling this COVID-19 pandemic, because it seems that they are not doing anything at all. Well, of course, I hope you've been listening to the Honorable Commissioner of Information of Enugu State, who is giving a rundown of the various measures taken by the state government, to the extent that there apparently are no challenges that the state government is facing, and it may very well be a model of efficiency to be copied by other states.
Exactly. Moses Hassan, it's possible that the strain of the virus in the white man's world is different from the strain in Africa, particularly Nigeria. If you really want to vaccinate our people, then we should be using our local strain of the virus to make the vaccine, not a foreign strain. This person is talking like a professional.
Now, we'll have this from Essien Owo. Essien Owo said, listening to Governor Ben Ayade this morning, I have hope that the African red zone is gradually rising. My only concern is that as governor, has it begun the roadmap to this self-reliance in his state?
Okay, that would be all.
That's right. Yeah, those are the twists that we want to take
now,
in the meantime.
Let's return to Ekiti State, where we have Margaret Faboyo. Margaret Faboyo, is there any challenge at all that is confronting Ekiti State? You have already reeled out all the strategies and how efficient they are and how effective they have been so far. The state is working so hard. We appreciate that. But is there any form of challenge that you have at the moment, in trying to fine-tune all those strategies that you told us about? Any challenge at all?
Yes. There are actually challenges, and I would like to run through that one by one. The first challenge is the health challenge. We have to stop the spread of the pandemic. Can you hear me? Okay. Health and pandemic challenges, that we have to stop the spread of the pandemic and also improve our health facilities. And the second challenge is the enforcement of lockdown measures. This affects the livelihood of people. This period that we had, Nigerians are social people. They want to go out. We are greeting people. We are hugging people. So there's a lockdown. People cannot freely move around. Majority of people earn their living on a daily basis only when they move around. Factories are closed, hotels are closed, schools are closed, and this is chopping the economy and affecting a lot of people. So this is a challenge for us. And another challenge is the security challenge. You all know that people cannot move and they can't earn living, and they are scared about their health. They become anxious, and security threats leading to desperation on the part of the people. Enforcement at the borders by having increased security at the borders in order to prevent any pandemic. The Southwest also institutionalized the Amotekun. So for us in Ekiti State, the challenge of not being able to generate revenue, and the landlords cannot be asking tenants to come and pay at this time. And you find out that even people, when you ask them to come and pay their debt, they will tell you it is after this pandemic that payment can be made. So, prices of things have gone up. In the course of fighting COVID-19, there are some challenges like finances that are constraints in procuring health equipment, paying salaries and retaining staff by private organizations. So COVID-19 is showing where our weaknesses are, and that is why we are addressing the issue as they are identified by procuring the molecular laboratory, not only for COVID, but to strengthen the health system generally, and also securing our borders. We have to ensure the use of face masks. A lot of people are not used to using face masks. So it is when they see you that they will remember, oh, I have to put on my face mask. Then funding for the health sector, not only in Ekiti State, but across board. So, and there are challenges of changes in education. Schools are closed, children are at home, and there are some that haven't set up their online learning facilities. They are just trying to do that now. So it's a lot of challenges around. But I pray and I'm optimistic that we will see the end of this. If we can see the end of the Spanish flu of 1980, I'm confident that definitely this too shall pass.
Thank you very much, Margaret, for your optimism. Just one point, because we would also like Dr. Kawo of the FCT to speak to this. You talked earlier about the security challenge, particularly the breaches on the restriction on interstate movement. We have heard reports of a number of states turning back those who were trying to smuggle in people using all kinds of trucks and using all kinds of devices. How much of a headache has this been to Ekiti State in terms of transit vehicles conveying persons in all kinds of awkward places?
For us in Ekiti State, we have a procedure. If you want to bring food items, essential food items, you have to write to us ahead, and we will send you a security pass. When we send you a security pass, we will alert the people at the border that we have given approval for so-so person with so-so name and details of the vehicle coming into town. So when the person gets to the border, it is easy for them to move around. And I can tell you, if you go around the state, I've gone to Lagos, I've gone to Abuja. Ekiti is one of the states where lockdown measures are being taken so seriously. If you are not having an approval, you can't come into the state. At the borders, people are turned back when they don't have legitimate reason or approval from government to come into the state. So the government is increasing security at the borders, and we are doing a lot to make sure that this lockdown measure is being maintained to a high level.
All right, good work there. And back to Enugu, Commissioner Chidiaro, let's also share the challenge that Enugu State has at the moment, because considering the ubiquitous nature of COVID-19, it cannot be hurled now. So what are those challenges that you have that the government also intends to confront?
Yeah, thank you, Kirian. I'm happy you've come back to this. I didn't know where this statement of we didn't have any challenge came in. But let's deal with that. First, the major challenge we have, like all over Nigeria has, is the issue of strict enforcement of the movement restrictions across interstate borders. This will be very important, because if we can stop these movements across, Enugu would have actually been zero now, because all we have is what has been imported. But are we making efforts? Plenty of efforts has been made in this direction. Two, everybody knows that there are challenges arising financially from the fact that revenues cannot be collected by the Board of Internal Revenue, and the resources are getting lower, and we still need to meet our obligations. Well, that is a general problem for which Enugu State would continue to plan to get out. But let me tell you, Enugu is also gaining from the transparency and prudent financial management the governor has instituted in place. That is why we are not, it's not as if we are isolated from the global economic problem. But we're able to take part of this challenge because the governor has been making savings over times. So there's a general financial problem arising from this. Enugu is withering it as much as possible. Thanks to the federal government, Enugu is also trying to assess the funds made available by CBN for commercial banks to lend to the government to improve the health facilities. We're already moving quick to assess this, to increase our capacity. What I'm saying is that baseline capacity, Enugu is in good situation. Then finally, of course, we face a general hunger problem in Nigeria and all over the world due to this lockdown. But there's something essential too. I'm proud to be an Enugu man, and I have to say it anywhere, raising my heads high. Part of what Enugu is enjoying now is our investment in agriculture in the past 5 years. So you see, we've called up the Coast City rice. We've been able to monitor and keep down the prices of essential goods in the market because we have storage capacity. We have agricultural capacity that we've been building up in 5 years. So we have food in the market. However, in the greatest of it, Enugu will continue to urge all people, not just in Enugu, not just in the southeast, but in the entire Nigeria, to please try as much as possible to maintain these protocols of the NCDC. If we do safe social distancing, if we wash our hands regularly, if we use sanitizers, if we also contact the health, people anytime there's any danger or any suspicion, I'm sure together Nigeria will come across this, and that's the position of Enugu any day.
All right. Thank you very much, Chidi Aro, the Commissioner for Information in Enugu State. Let's come back to our Abuja studios. Dr. Mohammed Kawu. Dr. Mohammed Kawu, you ticked off some of the challenges that you're experiencing in the Federal Capital Territory. But overall, what is the prognosis in terms of COVID-19? Are we doing more testing? Are we seeing more cases coming up? Are we ramping up on public enlightenment, particularly in the satellite locations? Is Abuja getting ready for the gradual reopening of the economy?
Yeah, thank you very much. Certainly Abuja is getting ready, despite all the challenges I reeled out. We have mapped out strategies to combat them. We have gone to the other communities that we have not been to do contact tracing, searching and testing. As I said last time, we have a laboratory, 54-gene expert lab that has been donated to us. We just had a meeting yesterday with the Minister of State for Health, and our PAMSEX is going to be activated any moment from now to add to the number of cases that we're going to be testing. If you've seen the result from NCDC, where they reel out the number of patients tested all over the country, after Lagos, Abuja is the second. And so we've tested a lot, we are testing a lot. The other issue is we are working seriously on advocacy and sensitization, because we felt people still need to know so much about this disease and believe in it, so that they take personal responsibility of their situation. Government can only assist you if you come out and need support, then the support will be available. But if you decide to go in and lock yourself with your problems, we can only come and pick you from your house, maybe do postmortem, unfortunately. So we are doing a lot of advocacy, and that is very, very important. And the second most important thing is enforcement of this, the 2 weeks added easing of lockdown. I think it's very important. It has been a challenge in the territory. If you go to the suburbs, sometimes you feel as if there's no advocacy. My minister used to say, while he drives from Gwarimpa to his office, as if there's no lockdown.
Okay,
yes.
Dr. we are actually running out of time. We'd like to thank you. In Kingsley, indeed, many states are making efforts, really, but the efficacy of the efforts is what is yet to establish, because we're still having rising cases of COVID-19. And we want to thank Margaret Faboyer. Thank you for being part of our program this morning. In fact, Ekiti State is doing well from all you've told us. And down to Enugu, where yours sincerely is from, I'd like to thank Information Commissioner Nnelugo Chidiaro. Your efforts is working from all indications. Thank you indeed for also explaining all that for us today on this show. Thank you for coming. And Acting Secretary of FCT, Health and Human Services Secretariat, Dr. Mohammed Kawu. Of course, you're almost one of us here in the studio, because you're always around to tell us about the FCT situation with respect to COVID-19. And I think we...
That's right. Dr. Kawu, thank you very much. One point that